Hey, how you all doing? My wife Tammy nominated me for this 22 a day campaign in order to raise awareness for veteran suicide. And as a chaplain who served in the military for 12 years and who has worked in the VA a little while, I want to talk to you a little bit about veteran suicide. I wanted to talk to the veterans themselves about some of the issues that we go through. And I as well want to talk to non veterans because non veterans don't understand everything that we go through. So a little bit of information may be helpful for them. And that's what I'm start out with today. In Afghanistan, during our Welcome to Afghanistan stand down, I had a chaplain that told us that if you were to take away the Taliban, all the enemies, all the guns and everything, and just have Afghanistan, the country, the terrain, the environment, it's a very dangerous place just by itself. I mean, the environment itself is dangerous. The heat is dangerous. Just the vast expanse of the deserts and the mountains and everything, that in itself is dangerous. He said that if we took some time and just soaked all that in, we may feel some feelings that we'd never felt before. We might actually find God out there. And I had several experiences in Afghanistan. I felt some of those feelings, and I'm here to tell you that I believe that Afghanistan is where I actually met God. And I tell you this part of my story just to kind of tell you my testimony, but it also does deeply connect with the veteran demographic as well. We as human beings, we're all searching for meaning in life. And when a person is put in those horrendous, stressful conditions, sometimes we have a meeting with the divine. And I believe that that's what happened to me. So I want to tell you a little bit about the veteran community. Out of 329 people that live in the USA today, there's only 1% of the population that serve in the military. Only 1% of our population do we ask to go into harm's way and defend our country. Only 1% of our population do we ask to go in our stead so that we can remain at home with our families and our children and raise our families. Only 1% of our population do we say, suffer the hardships of being away from your family. Be constantly fearful for your life. Go forth and take life if necessary, and suffer the guilt and shame because of that. I'll be honest with you. I don't completely agree with all the things that our military does. I question a lot of the things they do. I don't agree with all the conflicts that we get ourselves into. But I will say one thing, that I do respect each man and woman that puts on the uniform and defends our country. I have a deep respect for each individual. Okay. Needless to say, there are a lot of different injuries that can occur to service members when they're in combat, both physical and emotional. And I want to talk about one of the most basic ones, one of them that nobody hardly ever thinks about. The military is a culture, a subset of the larger American culture. Okay, and when I was active duty, my family and I, we were surrounded by many people that were just like us, that were going through the same exact things that we were going through. I was deployed with other Marines and corpsmen, and my wife and children were surrounded by other spouses whose Marines and corpsmen were deployed as well. They had a huge support network. We literally were a tribe of warrior families who supported one another in ways that is very hard to find in this world today. And to transition from that tribe-like life into just simply going home, moving into an apartment or into a cul-de-sac next to people who hardly even care that you exist. I mean, it happens. And even if we do find people that do care, it's very hard for them to relate to us because they've never had those experiences that a veteran has had. And so you see the rise of different veteran organizations such as biker clubs and VFW and the VA and things like that, because veterans need to be around other veterans. They need to be able to connect with other people that have been through the same things as them. And so I want to talk a little bit about some of these issues that we deal with, and we'll just knock the first one out. It's post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. We've all heard about it. Maybe we don't exactly fully understand what that's about, but it's defined as a psychiatric disorder wherein somebody has either been a victim or witnessed a traumatic event such as death, disaster, or even sexual violence. And the result of this is just re-experiencing this traumatic event over and over again, whether it's in dream or we're waking. Sometimes we can withdraw from others. We can have emotional outbursts and other symptoms, okay? Veterans may not necessarily exhibit these symptoms right away because when we're in combat, we have this tendency to put this armor on. We have this tendency to build this barrier up between ourselves and our feelings because we don't want to feel that stuff. We got to operate. We got to do our job. And so we don't want to feel those different feelings that, are in there. They're in there. Trust me. But when we do get back home, we find ourselves in a somewhat relaxed situation. We don't need the armor so much. The armor starts to crack. And before we know it, we just have this huge tsunami full of emotions that just flood out of us that we don't even know what to do with them. So a lot of things happen because of that. And research has said that it's not the severity of the symptoms that drive people to seek help from the VA. What it is questions of spirituality. It's questions about the meaning of their life. I mean, if we lose the meaning for our life, if we lose purpose in life, we have a major problem. And that's where we got to go. We got to go find help at the VA. And this connects with me in my own faith journey because I believe that God changed my life through a few IEDs in Afghanistan. I grew closer to God because of that. He was the only hope that I had. And I think because I relied on him so heavily, he protected me from PTSD. My mind was at ease. The next one is moral injury, and that can occur whenever we have broken our own moral code, when we have broken the code of our military service, or even society at large. We've done some terrible thing that just cannot be reconciled. In combat, we have to make split decisions just like that, and sometimes we don't have time to think. It's either if you think and you die, you think and you die. And some of those decisions that we make can lead to collateral damage, whether it's intentional or not. And I've heard moral injury described as a chapter in a book of our life, okay? And that's the only chapter that we ever spend time in. That's the only chapter that we ever read. We completely ignore the other chapters of this book. We don't have, a birth. We don't have the chapter of being a teenager. We don't have the chapter of us first falling in love. The chapter that we spend our life in is a chapter where we did this terrible thing and we just cannot get over it. We become that sin, that terrible thing. And I've talked to veterans who struggle with this, and I see their guts just turning in knots talking about this because they just can't let it go. So this can also occur whenever you witness something that a terrible event, and maybe you could have done something about it, maybe you couldn't have, but the fact is that you're telling yourself that you didn't do something about it, and you're morally injured because of that. The next thing is survivor's guilt, and this is based on having survived some type of traumatic event, a death, while somebody else has not. They've died, maybe it was your friend, a family member, something like that. And I can't even count how many times I've had these conversations with veterans, both inside the VA and outside the VA, about expressing guilt over losing a buddy. And it could be as simple as losing somebody in a firefight, or it could be something like switching seats in a Humvee during a convoy, Or maybe you were tired and you needed to switch convoys with somebody. Maybe you needed to go on a later convoy. And that person that you switched the seat with or changed convoys with ends up dying by an IED blast or something like that. And it's terrible to have that feeling. This can also be due to a sexual attack, a sexual assault, and having feelings that somehow the survivor is at fault for that sexual assault. And I want to tell you so many times that being sexually assaulted is never your fault. Okay, it's never your fault. Which leads me to military sexual trauma, MST, which is, a rape or repeated sexual harassment that has occurred in the military. It doesn't sound that different, but it really is. The military has not always been the greatest at dealing with these cases, and it still struggles to treat these cases in the correct manner. In the past, even while under investigation, the victim has been forced to work side by side with their attacker in the same room, doing the same thing. And I can't even imagine how that would feel. Sometimes the attacker could be the person in charge of that unit, leaving them a victim within the hierarchy of the military unit. And the military still strives to deal with these things correctly, but the VA has developed a wonderful program for military sexual trauma to have healing from these horrendous crimes. Now, my goal for the next 22 days is to talk about these struggles more in depth and how we can engage and deal with these struggles in a productive way. I want to say that I am a chaplain, and I have worked in the VA before. I've mostly worked with people that struggle with these things: PTSD, military sexual trauma, survivor's guilt, moral injury. Additionally, I've worked with people that have drug addiction, homelessness, and now even incarceration. I'm a prison chaplain now. These three things are unfortunate side effects of all of these different mental illnesses that happen from combat. And I have my own experiences in the military, and I've learned much from the veterans that I've ministered to. So I speak with the voice of a veteran as well as a person who cares for veterans. So I'm going to do these push-ups now, and tomorrow I'll come back with the same subject, but maybe just a different area of it, okay? So thank you for watching, and I'm going to knock these push-ups out. See you tomorrow.